B-Leaguers, welcome to the B-Leagues Pick'em Show. It's your boy here, Dan, at the B-League says on behalf of Going42 Live, and I am here to help you with Wildcard Week 1 round show for Pick'em props via Underdog Fantasy, promo code GF2 for 100% matching deposit up to 250 big ones, I think, unless they have had other promos pop out over the last 2 weeks while I've been away. I've been on vacation. Thanks for staying pat while I've been gone. I hope you've had some success. If not, then tough luck. This is where we're at, GF2, promo code at Underdog Fantasy or underdog.com, and go from there. If you are new to the show, as always, go to our YouTube, hit the alert button, hit subscribe, thumbs up, all that crap, leave a comment. I'll get to it when I get to it. And if you want to talk more about your pick and props and all that sort of jazz, as always, you can come to our Discord. It is free. It's a fantastic Discord, especially this time of day. We got rookie player profiles dropping as well. You can see Jeff's been pumping them out. They look really fantastic, good comps. Not sure I like the one about the boy from UT with the Josh Downs, John Ross comparison. That scares the absolute piss out of me. I don't like that at all. I hope he's doing well anyway. But as always, you can find good content there. We've got off-season content coming your way as well. All off-season long playoff content as well. We're going to do prop shows. They're going to be coming out too up until the Super Bowl, I guess. We will see. But here we are. We're at the playoff wildcard round. I kind of didn't like to do it. I was away for week 17. I was on vacation. Hope you guys had a happy holidays. And then obviously week 18, there's just so much variance in there. I just don't want to give you guys the wrong advice. Not that I give you right advice anyway, but I don't want to go out on the limb and just absolutely cock it up with guys that I've never heard of and props that I think might be unreasonable. It's probably best to save your money and stay away. Either way, we're going to look at, outside of the Rams-Minnesota game, I might have a look at the end. We'll see how that's going. But outside of that game, obviously, because what's happening over in LA, and if you are okay, please, over there, please stay safe. If you are listening to this, I hope you and your families are well. You're probably not, so who gives a shit? Either way, we're going to get over it and move on to the playoff games. We're looking at one playoff prop per game. Obviously, there's 6 games, except for the one from LA, Minnesota, which is the last game of the slate. And we're going to have a look at a few of these picks as it would be. So pick number 1, we're going to look at Baltimore and Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh, obviously, get in as a wild card. They're on a 4-game losing streak. They're at Baltimore. We're looking at Rashad Bateman, obviously, with Zay Flowers out. So Rashad Bateman, we're going to go. It's easy to go Tylan Wallace, or it's easy to go Nelson Aguilar here. I feel like there's going to be a bit of pieces. We're going to go Rashad Bateman higher than 45.5 receiving yards. It was at 44.5. Or if you don't like that, if you feel like that's a bit too much for him, his highest reception over 21.5. It was previously set at 22.5. Normally when a key piece like Zay Flowers gets hurt and you look about the rest of the Ravens and how they've typically operated, you tend to think they'll lean on Henry and Andrews, as it would be, who in their own right this year have had standout seasons. But I'd like to think we'll get a little bit more Isaiah Likely and Rashad Bateman. And I feel like we're always going to get a little bit more juice on Isaiah Likely when these sorts of things happen. His numbers seem to shoot up a fair bit because he has those streaky games in him. But Bateman, I feel like, might be the safest option as well. And he might be unlucky. He might get Joey Porter on him, and that could be a tough matchup as well. But at the same, we're going to talk about those tough matchups he's had with Pittsburgh in a minute. But look, Bateman, for starters, has been healthy this season for once. As a result, we've seen a different side of him. His yards per game for the year is lower than his quota of 37 yards per game at the moment. So we're looking at 45.5. It's higher than what he's normally giving us, which is a little bit of a problem. But, that's down to his streaky usage as well. 7 games over that set price this year is also 5. And we get the uptick with Flowers and what he leaves behind those targets and obviously that yak that he kind of brings to the table as well. So I think he can get there. The longest reception prop probably for me is a little bit more problematic because the line is, it was yet to be set. I'm reading this before I put it down. It was at around 22, 23.5. That's where I felt comfortable at. It's down to 21.5. And I feel pretty good with that too. So, he's had 8 games over this marker already. So he's had 8 games over 21.5 this year. And that kind of ties hand in hand with what he's done over the 37.5, 45.5 as it would be. So, we're 50-50 on him. So 50% of the time he's going over 45.5 and he's going over 21.5. And I feel pretty good about that this week. In regards to the Steelers and the matchup for him, look, Porter's been an absolute monster. The Steelers allowed the 8th most yards per game, though, this year to wide receivers and held Bateman, though, in check, both games under 30 and lower than 20 on his longest reception. So when they've played him this year, they've absolutely hammered him. As well as that, through his career, he has struggled against the Steelers. Now, look, there's mitigating circumstances for that. Obviously, he's had injury issues. Sometimes Lamar Jackson's not playing when they play him in that last game or two Jackson's also been injured. There's been reasons for this being taking place. In that regard, half the time Jackson was a part. We can call it whatever you want. I feel like he's had a bit of a rough run with his matchups. I feel like this is probably the first time, and it might have been interesting to see if Zay Flowers was playing, what his line would have been, because I feel like this might be a game for him where he actually steps up and steps through and breaks through, and having that bad form against the Steelers. I think he might break through this week in that regard. Pick number 2 this week, we're going to go check out the Texans game. The Chargers are at the Texans. I really feel like this is a game the Chargers should be winning quite easily. The way the Houston Texans have been playing, you don't know what you're going to get out of them. They are, the Forrest Gump chocolate analogy. That's what the Houston Texans have been over the last 3 months. But we're going to look at a couple of players here, or at least one player here. Joe Mixon, I like this week. And I feel like we're going to do something that we probably has been in and out of doing this season. We're going to go higher than 20.5 receiving yards. And we're going to go CJ Stroud as well, lower than 231.5. I feel like the Texans are going to struggle at home. Now, I see all these prop bets out there saying, the road underdog and all this and all that. And everyone's going, Denver at Buffalo. Like, that's the easy one to pick. Like, no, this is really the game that's there for the taking, because the Chargers have shown that on the road, they are tough to break down no matter what. And we have a game here where the Texans, who just are not a form team, and they've lost so many pieces to injury. Their defense is holding up well, but you lose Diggs, you lose Dell, you lose some of your O-line. Like, you're going to struggle, all right? And that's just how it's going to be in that regard. So this matchup is all about the who, where, and how for me. For Stroud, forget the Week 18 game. He's gone over 240 yards twice in his last 4 games, both on the road, sandwiched in between 2 games at home, under 185. They have a home game, and his last 2 home games, he's pumping under 185, and that's a problem for me. He struggled big time at Houston of late, so my confidence in him versus Mac et al. Is just not there. But this is the point where we look at what he has to work with as well. And, we're not looking at Dell, we're not looking at Diggs. We're hoping at either Schultz or Mechie or Hutchinson. Maybe they can kick up a gear to get him over that 230.5. I don't believe they're good enough to kind of get him there. Schultz has been an absolute downer this year. When you look at it in that regard, however, Mixon, his matchup is prime in the passing game. Now, on the ground, it's a tougher matchup, and I'll say that, the Chargers, they've had their moments in the past, but they're a different defense this year. But in the passing game, they actually struggle. They have allowed the most targets to running backs this year, at around 7 per game. And unless the Texans are hanging their hat on Dare Ogunbowale, I'd say it'll be a little bit more of a heavier dose of Joe Mixon this week. Mixon's average is a click under 4 targets a game. His yards haven't really pumped over 30 yards of late, but he's bordering around that 2 to 3 for 25 to 30, give or take. So he should get there in the end. And, obviously, if the Chargers, if they are competitive, this might be the route that the Texans have to take to get them there, because they're showing you their hand. They can't really stop the passing game to the running back. This is their path to success for the Texans. I hope they exploit it, because if they do, 20.5 is a smash spot for Joe Mixon. Pick number 3, we're going to look at that Buffalo-Denver game. Well, obviously, the Broncos, they sneak through with that Week 18 game versus Kansas, and they go on the road to Buffalo, who should be a heavy favorite through the playoffs, because I don't know what the hell the Chiefs are going to dish up for us. But we're going to look at Bo Nix. We're going to go higher than 227.5 passing yards. It was previously set at 220, 221. So we're looking at, 4 or 5 days later, and this thing got juiced up a little bit more than what people might be comfortable with. And you might not think, 227 is a lot. But when you break down or round it down and round it up, you're looking at 220 to 230. And people might not like that 10-yard differential, and that might be enough for them to squeeze under. But the Bills, they have I've also forgotten one more prop with this game. I like Marvin Mims to couple with that. I like him at highest reception over 19.5. And that is one of my favorite prop bets, and I'm going to go over that in a minute. But let's go through this anyway. The Bills have had an off year in regards to their defense. The injuries they've had this year has been mental all season, and mental for them, because normally week 1 they lose half their team anyway. But they seem relatively settled right now, and that's great. That their linebacking core has been settled. They've been rotating through players. Their safeties with Rapp and Hamlin, they've been in and out from injuries. It's been all over the place. The D-line's probably been the most settled piece for them. But they're still coughed up over 4,000 passing yards this year at an average of 241. Joe Milton, 241. Okay, they rested their starters. I get it. 2 weeks earlier, Drake May, 261. Jared Goff a week before that, 494. Matt Stafford a week before that, 320. Now we're talking about accomplished, outside of the rookies, accomplished passing guys in Stafford and Goff and better teams around them, I understand. But if rookie Joe Milton and rookie Drake May can put up 250 on average between the two of them, I feel pretty good about mixing that regard. The only team to not get there in that 5-week span or that 5-week quota, ironically, the New York Jets and Aaron Rodgers and Tyrod Taylor, they combined for about 200 yards between them. It was an atrocious game, that, and the weather was atrocious, and the Jets are just shit anyway, so it is what it is. Knicks is all over the place. And 2 to 3 months ago, I'd have said he's getting bailed out like big plays, like what you get from Cortland Sutton, or what you might get from Marvin Mims, or a dump off Javonte Williams that goes somewhere. These sorts of things were normal practices for him. But what's normal then is normal now. So it's not really like he was getting bailed out. This is the new norm, and this is what he does, and he's really good at it. So we have to treat it like such. Now, what are my teams with solid secondaries like, where he's had some success? He's kind of done the opposite. So teams that you think, okay, solid secondary, he's going to struggle, and a weaker secondary, he's going to exploit. He's kind of flipped that around. So you look at Kansas, decent secondary, he put 321 on. The Chargers, decent secondary, put on 261 on them. Cleveland, they've always had a good secondary, put on 294 on them. And he's going over on them. But you talk about those weaker secondaries, like you look at like Cincinnati, like everyone passes on Cincinnati. 219, he goes under this quota. You look at Indianapolis, one of the worst secondaries in the NFL, 131. Okay, Baltimore, one of the worst passing defenses in the league this year, 221. All these games that are there to exploit, he kind of doesn't do it, which makes me worry about this week's game, because he's got a right matchup in that regard. So you can see he's struggling. So I'm a bit cautious of like a good matchup for the quarterback, and he doesn't do so well. However, a road game in the playoffs and the Bills, he might have to buck that trend this week to see another week. So I'm hoping he goes over in a high-scoring game. The Bills will bring out a high-scoring game out of everyone, and that's where we're at. To do that, he's going to need an explosive play or two, and I feel like Marvin Mims is prime for this game, prime. It's on the cards, and at 19.5 yards for his longest reception, I can't see how he does it, because really one reception is going for 20, 22, 23. 6 of his last 7 games, he smashed that quota, with his longest reception at minimum in that span is 30 yards. Let me repeat that. His longest reception at minimum in that span, 6 out of 7 games is at least 30 yards. Okay. 2 of those games, he's pumped over 50 as his longest reception, and in 1 of those games, he's pumped over 90. So we have a minimum of 30. He's going to receive it at a minute. At least one of his targets is going for 30 yards. That is wild. His current form is bonkers, and that's where he's at. So we're looking at that. He's a lock, I feel like, and he only boosts Nick's chances of getting over that 227. So we're talking about a guy in 3 of his last 7 games has gone 50, 50, or 90 as his longest reception. One of those helps us get Knicks to that 227.5 massively. 2 of those, we're home. And that's what I feel like we can look at that as almost like a stacking option in regards to our prop bet for the week. Pick number 4. I really should have saved this for the last one, but we're going to get on him now. We're going to go Mike Evans, lower than 5.5 receptions and lower than 76.5 yards versus Washington. So first of all, let's just address the elephant in the world, in the room. Let's address this elephant right now. I haven't seen a more fraudulent 1,000-yard season in my life. Let it be. Chris Godwin nearly got there on a broken foot 8 weeks ago. And here we are celebrating this guy for this year's achievement like he earned it. Fucking stop it. I've had enough. This guy was at 30 yards at halftime. He needed like 80, give or take, right? And they force-fed the shit out of it for him to get there. We're going to celebrate that? No, it wasn't a part of any game plan. You could see how they struggled. It was the most fraudulent thing I have ever seen. It should have been down. It should have been there, but here we are. We're touting it like brilliance. Oh, it was brilliance. Yeah, the last 8 seconds, they were all shitting themselves that he didn't fumble and go down. No, that was a fraudulent 1,000-yard. I will not have it any other way. Second of all, let's not act like the Marshall Lattimore effect isn't real. It was put out there that Evans averages 2.5 receptions for 43.5 yards in 13 games versus this one cornerback. Let's not act that that doesn't exist. Marshall Lattimore now with the Commanders. If he plays, he's on Evans, and that's it. But we're going to juice that quota up to 5.5 and 76.5, and we're going to get on that because we're riding the emotion of him punching 1,000. Let me be clear. A lot of receivers made 1,000 yards this year, and it took him to the last 8 seconds of week 18 in a playoff push to get there because they juiced the shit out of it. No, I won't have it. That's just absolute filth. If I'm the Commanders, if I'm Dan Quinn, I'm telling Lattimore to go out and disrupt the fuck out of that because you have to then rely on Jalen McMillan and Bucky Irving to go out there in their first playoff game to do this for you. That is a big responsibility on a couple of rookies. Very big. And that might be very hard to, even if they're at home, it doesn't matter. That is a very tough ask to do on a couple of rookies in that regard. So I feel like this is going to happen. And as a result, we're going to get near that 30-yard buffer. A 30-yard buffer on this matchup that we know this guy struggles at. I'm taking that. Washington, give them some actual credit. They have allowed the 9th fewest receptions this year to wide receivers that are mid-table in yards per game. So Washington can hold their own. Saints had a decent year in that regard. He's been a nice rookie addition, probably unsung for them. Pick number 5, we're going to go to the last prop for the week. We're going to go Saquon Barkley, higher than 103 rushing yards. I can't believe I'm going for a high quota. It was previously set at 101.5 and over over 11.5 receiving yards. Look, why? Because why the fuck wouldn't we? That's the answer to this. Why wouldn't we? At this point of the year, I can say he's putting up 100-yard bangers against everyone, and half the time he's being rested at the end of the third quarter, which is wild when you think about it. Over 100 yards in 4 of his last 5. He's done it 11 times out of 16 games this year. 11 times out of 16 games. That's friggin' bananas. So we can say on his side, this is almost as safe as a bet we can get, which is crazy to think. We can also add to this week 1 game. He played the Packers week 1, so that's your healthiest game of the season. He put up 109 with 2 touchdowns on the ground and 1 through the air. So if you like a touchdown prop, we're looking at 1.5. You can probably feel pretty good about that as well. He's coming off a week where they sat him to not break Eric Dickerson's record. With everyone wants to talk about this, like it's why. So I'm going to talk about it now because I've heard enough of this shit. They're going to force feed the absolute piss out of Barkley this week to prove a point. Like, if that's not on the cards, I don't know what is. Like, if they said, oh, you know, he would have only had to get 100 yards against the Giants week 15, week 18, yeah, everyone can do that. And they would have done that. And they're going to try and go out and they're going to run the absolute piss out of it now. We can also lean into the idea that the Eagles are going to try and protect Jalen Hurts a little bit more. He's been out a few weeks of the concussion protocol, and I know thumb, I think, as well. So he's been out a few weeks, and as we know, there's no next week for teams. And, you know, he gets that concussion this week, and they happen to win. Like, what do you want to do? You want to go on the road to Minnesota, or like you want to do that? You're going to try and win with Tanner McGee again? Like, Kenny Pickett? I don't think so. They're going to try and protect Hurts, I think, for 1 more week. I can feel it's going to be a heavy dose of Saquon Barkley, as it would be. Look, the Packers, they've always had, you know, we've spoken about this for years, and I've got to share the Monday night with Kyle, and we spoke about the Packers a lot. And if you listen to these Packers podcasts, you'll hear enough of it. But we could talk about that bend, don't break defense, and they've had that. Normally, their run defense is generally sus at best. However, this year they've kind of curved that reputation a bit to the point where they've allowed, the 8th fewest rushing yards to running backs this year. So, you know, in that regard, they've also allowed the 3rd most targets, 3rd most receptions, and 3rd most yards to the running back as well. So they're giving us around about 5 for 41 on average through the air to running backs. We can take that 1 or 2 targets that Barkley gets. We can see if you can get over the line for 11.5. I feel like it's tough to do, but again, I feel like they might be protecting Hurts 1 more week, and that could be it for them. And that he might also do this by the end of the 3rd quarter again, and that could be it for him if they start running away with this. The Packers' form of late has just been, I don't know. I don't even know how to quantify what they've been doing of late. And that's cool too, but you know, that's where they are at. You know, sometimes they lose to Chicago. Well, they don't really, but they did. That tells you everything you need to know about them. They're going to get done week 1, but that's okay. You're better off in the playoffs than not, I guess. Anyway, my name's Dan. I'm at the B League. Says we're going to recap the week 1 wildcard playoff for the NFL. I can't wait to do it. I'm going to get to watch some good games today. I don't watch college football. I don't care about that garbage. That's someone else's problem. It's just too much effort. It's like watching amateurs play. I don't want to deal with it. Pick number 1, Rashad Bateman at home versus Pittsburgh. We are higher than 45.5 receiving yards. It was at 44.5. And his highest reception over 21.5, which has come down a click or 2. Pick number 2, we're going to go Joe Mixon at home to the Chargers. We're going to go higher than 20.5 receiving yards, and CJ Stroud lower than 231.5 passing yards. It was at 230 versus the Chargers. Pick number 3, we're going to go Bo Nix on the road at Buffalo. It has come up a few bits. We're going to go Bo Nix higher than 227.5 passing yards. And we're going to get on Marvin Mims higher than 19.5 as his highest reception as well. Get to that in a second, Todd. I just saw your message pop up there. Pick number 4, Mike Evans, lower than 5.5 receptions and lower than 76.5 receiving yards. And we go pick number 5, Saquon Barkley, higher than 103 rushing yards. It was at 105 and over 11.5 receiving yards as well. My friend Todd here says the Packers are winning. Well, I mean, they're a 50-50 shot, Todd. That's the most confidence I can give you with that. Eagles at the link, they've been resting their team pretty much, it feels like, since week 15. So, I don't know. No Christian Watson. Reed's been sus as hell. You need Tucker Kraft to have a big game. Maybe he can exploit something, but not really going to run on the Eagles, I don't think. They've had their moments of weakness in that regard, but we know the Packers love a shootout, and when these games get out of control, they're kind of fun to watch, and they can do anything. And I don't know. I don't think I can trust Jordan Love this week. I got a bit more confidence in the Eagles. They've kind of had it. To be fair, they've had it kind of easy of late. But again, you got Saquon Barkley coming off a week off. I don't know. I think the Packers are going to stop him. He might win this on his own, I think. But that's just my take, Todd. I'm probably wrong, and that's okay. As long as he gets over 103 rushing yards and 11.5 receiving, we're good to go. Either way, I am Dan at the B League Says. Thank you very much for joining me this week. I will be back next week. We'll see what happens this week. Until then, safe bets, happy punts, cheers, and goodbye.